Hi, I'm Lisa Entwistle, founder of Wealthy Living and host of Wealthy Living Radio Show. I help open-minded, big-hearted people connect to themselves, others, and the world around them, guiding them to live a wealthy life both personally and professionally. Each fortnight, I have conversations with a variety of different professionals to discuss different wellness topics that cover physical, emotional, and spiritual wellness. We discuss how our choices impact our work, our relationship, and our health, and together we suggest ways to help you live a wealthy life. So in this episode, I'll be joined by an incredible changemaker, a social entrepreneur, Jeremy Meltzer, to discuss ways businesses can enhance the well-being of people globally and thrive by having a purpose beyond profit. Jeremy is an expert in business for purpose. After a life-changing experience while living in Cuba, which I'll let him tell you about in more detail shortly, Jeremy set out to find a solution to empower women and girls around the world. After discovering that a large percentage of consumers have the desire to buy from brands that clearly give back to the community, he founded I Equal Change, a fast-growing social enterprise which partners with online retailers with some of the world's most impactful NGOs. It's the world's first cause marketing platform providing online retailers with a way to give back with every sale to develop projects around the world. I Equal Change has raised over $783,000, which is impacting the lives of many, already about 235,000 people in 14 countries. So it gives me much pleasure to welcome Jeremy now. It's really exciting to have you join me today. So welcome.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. It's you're doing so many amazing things, and it's really exciting and inspiring to just read a little bit about your story. But maybe we can just start, if you can just tell us a little bit about your journey to how you've got to where you are now and why this path of business for purpose, and why you've chosen this path, and how was the idea conceived from launching something like iChange?
It's one big question.
It is one big question, but I felt like it all goes kind of together, so I thought we'll just get it all in one.
Well, I imagine a number of your guests can relate, and you may have heard this before, where sometimes these paths choose you.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes we choose a path, and life has a different plan. And so I'm fascinated by the idea that sometimes what we wish for ourselves is not what life wishes from us. And how do we then actually get out of the way so that we can do our best work? So for me, this story really began over 20 years ago. I lived in Havana, Cuba, as you mentioned.
Yep.
And I was there for 4 months, and I had a Cuban girlfriend, and I was there during a time when I didn't see another tourist there for the whole time I lived there. Like, no one went at that stage. This was like 1999.
Yep.
I'm giving away my age here, and which is fine. And I lived in a really kind of poor part of town. It was Havana Vieja, the old crumbling colonial part of the city. And what was sort of remarkable was I had this incredible sort of experience of living with the community as a result of living with this Cuban woman. And she was a nurse, and she knew a lot of people. And for those of you who've been to Cuba, there's all these spontaneous parties which will happen. Someone finds some bongos and a bottle of rum, and before you know it, there's a party on someone's balcony until 2 a.m. on a Tuesday.
That sounds awesome.
It does sound great, and it was. And it was fascinating because it was very much, coming from a background of relative privilege. I saw how people with so little had so much to give. Yeah. And so much spirit and joy which they were able to find in the small things, which sadly a lot of us have lost in our complicated, distracted lives, eliciting and finding joy in the simple things that are accessible to us on a moment-to-moment basis. Yet in that time, I started to hear a lot of stories that made me feel really upset and angry. And they were stories of violence and stories of abuse when her girlfriends would gather, and I would listen and speak to them and hear their stories about their husbands and partners and boyfriends. And I just thought to myself, what the hell is going on? Like, why in this community do these women think it's the most normal thing in the world? Where we come from, for most of it, it's complete aberration of male behaviour. Of course, it's a huge issue in Australia as well, and I think we should talk about that a bit later as well. But this was my first experience of it, of these women speaking about it as if it was the most normal thing in the world. And then I went and I was in Miami for about 3 years, again working and living with the Latin American community, and just heard so many stories. And being the sensitive soul that I am, it just broke my heart a little bit every time that I heard these stories and experienced it from ex-girlfriends or girlfriend telling me what they'd been through and what they almost expected men to do. And I found it quite breathtaking. I thought, what's going on where in this community is the most normal thing in the world? I've now travelled and I'm travelling and I'm hearing these stories. How enormous is this issue? Became the guiding question for me. So I realised there was a huge gap in my knowledge. I hadn't studied gender. I was simply deeply curious about this issue, sensed it to be enormous. So I started travelling and meeting with NGOs, and it's sort of been, I think, almost about 28 countries now, and sort of over 50 NGOs that work with women and girls to just sit with these incredible impact leaders, people who have been committed to unlocking the potential of women and girls, to challenging issues in the communities that they serve, and had an incredible awakening of understanding around the depth of this issue and the complexity of it. And that formed the basis for wanting to create a new funding stream, because sitting with these impact leaders and NGOs, and of course they all need more money to do their work. And then in the developing world, where a lot of us have been, we know how a small amount of money can go a long way.
Yeah.
So I thought, wouldn't it be incredible if we could create a new and sustainable funding stream for these organisations? And coming from an entrepreneurial family, I thought, what if we could use the power of business? I'd never heard the term social entrepreneur or social enterprise. It was actually about 3 years later that I first heard this. I'm like, oh, wow, maybe that's what I am, because I had no idea what I was doing or what this thing would be called. I just thought, okay, kind of come from a business background, family are all entrepreneurs. What if we could somehow, I had this instinct that we could use business. But I knew from a position of business, we had to use the levers of business so that it's not just a once-off and we're not just appealing to people's goodwill and good nature. Business is about maximising profitability. I thought, what if we can work alongside that to create this new funding stream? And if we can prove the return on those donations, if we can prove that it's actually great marketing spend rather than a cost to the business, then the end result is we can raise those funds sustainably. And then we can create the impact that we wanted to create. So it sort of grew into this idea, even though it happened, the genesis of it was then about 6 years ago. I woke up one morning and it was about 3:00. And, I think we can all relate to having those ideas.
Yeah.
That happen really early in the morning. Often we should go back to sleep and forget about them.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's something in the subconscious which says, this is sort of, there could be something here. And I think those ideas that won't leave us alone are the ideas that should be pursued.
Yeah.
And in fact, I read recently Elizabeth Gilbert from Eat, Pray, Love, and she talks about the nature of creativity and how ideas visit us. And if we don't act on it, they go to the next person. So,
yes, I read that too.
Yeah, was it great?
No, it was in Big Magic.
That's right.
She said that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I think it's it feels true, that this wonderful idea that an idea, a creative possibility visits us.
Yep.
And then we have to act on it.
Yeah.
And it'll hang around for a bit, kind of nudging us, come on, do something about it. And if we're either distracted or not engaged or lazy or it all feels too hard.
Or it's not for us.
Or it's not, or it doesn't, it's not for us. at the time, then it goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then until someone actually
grabs it
and runs with it.
Yeah.
Yes. So this one was kind of kept nudging me. It's like, come on, there's something here. It wouldn't leave me alone. And the idea was very simple. It was one of, I thought, what if we could flip the model? So Dad and I had this olive oil business up in the Yarra Valley, and I was living in New York at the time, and I saw that there was, obviously I've been meeting with these NGOs and saw this great need, and the idea was very simple. I thought, what if we, instead of asking our customers to make a donation, so we had this online site which was ticking along and growing, what if we flipped the model? What if we gave back as a business a small amount, but a clear amount, like $1 with every sale, and we built somehow a digital platform that we integrated it into the checkout somehow. I had no idea at the time. But our customers could choose where to send our dollar to one of 3 development projects. So we empowered our customer to actually choose where they wanted to send our donation to the issue that they cared about.
Yeah.
And just something felt, that could be really interesting. Like they would feel inspired. It could be good for the business. We could raise these funds with every sale. And so that really was the foundation of the idea. And it's been a sort of 6-year journey since then.
Yes, that sounds, that's a really thorough journey that you've taken us on, and I think it gives people a really a good feel of your journey, and just going from so long ago being passionate about something that you see happening in the world. And I think a lot of people that have travelled, or even just locally when you go out, you see things that don't feel good, and a lot of people feel it inside them, feel it in their soul, but they don't necessarily do anything about it because it just feels so overwhelming and big. So it's really interesting to hear how, this sort of fire was ignited within you about this issue of, violence against women in the places that you were in. And you knew you had to do something, but you had at that time no idea of what to do. And then, went on, and then it all pieced together because you sort of kept it, I'm sure, somewhere in your psyche that I need to work out a way to make a change with this area. So that's amazing.
And you make a great point. Everyone cares about something.
Yeah.
Everyone is passionate about an issue.
Yeah.
But of course we're all busy.
Yeah.
And it's challenging to engage. Like we often don't know where to start because the issue feels so big.
That's right.
And so the inspiration behind this was, $1 adds up quickly.
Yeah.
Now already, as you mentioned, over $780,000, which is impacting many people's lives. But, it's those small incremental steps,
That's right.
It's a drop in the ocean, which creates the ocean itself. And so it's, but what's interesting, we're learning that, even big brands that we're now, wonderful to be partnered with, and small brands, they want to do something, but just don't know where to start.
That's right.
I think it's sort of symbolic of all of us. We all want to engage. It just needs to be made relatively simple.
Yeah, because it's like the notion of like, how do you go from the idea to the conception? And you had this idea at 3 a.m, and it kept, it kept going. It wasn't like you could go back to sleep. So you knew you had to do something with it. But it's just phenomenal that you worked out the vehicle of how to do that, because to me, that's the overwhelming part. I think most people would say that they're not often short of the ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I reckon I've got a book of ideas, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you make that idea actually happen? So you've done it obviously looking at doing it on a really large scale. But if someone wanted to do something that was giving back to a cause, apart from, going to make a meal and drop it off at a homeless shelter or something like that, that's a great thing to do, but it's also just a one-off and probably on a very small scale. But if someone was in business or had a small business, I'm not asking you for the idea of what they should do, but like, how do they go from having the idea to making it happen? Like, you talk about small steps, but what does that actually look like? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's, we're all on our own unique journeys, and we're all conditioned by what has happened to us.
Yep.
From the moment of birth, most of what's happened to us we didn't choose.
Yep.
It just happened to us.
Yep.
And so I feel what you're essentially saying, which is a really beautiful question, which is, what is that deeper calling that all of us have that we often don't get the chance to act on?
Yeah.
Because we were brought up in a community or society where there are pressures to become a certain thing, to become a doctor, for example, or to follow a certain career which may have not been the calling of our soul. And, it's hard to know when you're 17 anyway what that calling is.
Yeah.
And, of course, by the time you might find that out, you're busy with a career or family or both, and it's just hard to find the time. It seems that... I've been very fortunate and privileged that I've been able to carve out the time. I don't have kids at this point in my life, and I've been able to just sort of remain very focused. I think in life there are endless distractions.
Yeah.
There are endless distractions, increasingly endless distractions, and what I feel is when we find that thing which we know we must impact, our soul doesn't leave us alone.
Yeah.
What it starts to do is the distractions start to fall away.
Yeah.
It's like you become like an arrow towards your target, where everything else just becomes, you just sort of cut the meat off the bone even more. It's just like, no, that doesn't serve me, that doesn't serve me, that doesn't serve me. And not only are you reclaiming time, you're reclaiming your energy and you're reclaiming your focus. And I think if all of us sort of objectively were to look at the things that distract us
yep.
and the things that we engage in to sort of, entertain or sort of titillate or just sort of create little hits of endorphins in the brain every day and added that up, it could be quite a lot of time. In fact, there's some interesting studies that are showing that it is a lot of time. From the coffees to the chit-chats to the social media, there's probably a good hour or more every day at the least that we just sort of entertain ourselves with. It's ultimately nonsense. Because it is nonsense. It's actually it actually doesn't bring us deep joy. It just gives us little hits of chemicals, which make us feel good from one moment to the next. And the problem with that is that we're always on to the next thing.
Yeah.
We need that
it's
next
more little
hit.
happiness rather than fulfillment.
Exactly. And so my humble sort of thoughts around this is that it's important to, when we find that thing that we know we must act upon, and a big driver for me as well is that, life goes quickly. Yeah. And I think that's something that is inescapable for all of us. Yeah. And for me, the pain of regret is far greater than the pain of trying and failing. Yeah. I knew that for some reason since I was a young boy. And I knew that, it was sort of cheeky, like if I was in a room with a girl, I thought she was really, really pretty. And I thought, even when I was a teenager, I'm like, the pain of not trying was so visceral for me. I'm like, I wish I would have just had the courage to go up and say hi. And for those of us, we've all been there. Yeah. And saying hi is often a lot easier than you think it is. You just go up and say hi, and generally it works out or it doesn't, but at least you tried. Yeah. And the pain of like the mind saying, what if, and this could have happened and that could have happened, and all the little rabbit holes and the way we can torture ourselves with not knowing, to me is far more painful than trying and failing. And I think I've sort of extrapolated that to other areas of my life where it's like, let's just bloody try. Yeah. Because the pain of not knowing is far greater. And so how do you sort of act upon these things? Baby steps. Yeah. Baby steps. I mean, this thing has been 6 years in development and we've still got a long way to go. Yeah. But another thing I really feel is important is listening to the wisdom of the body. So the body is telling us moment to moment what is right for us. Yeah. Often the mind gets in the way. We have a big story about what we think we should be doing, and it gets in the way of actually what our body is telling us is right. Yeah. And so what I've experienced is that when you just try something, and just check in with how that feels. The body is actually giving us all sorts of information if it feels right, if it is what really wants to happen. And so that's sort of been my experience around enormous action.
Yep.
And checking in constantly, less with the mind and more with the body.
Yep.
Around if it feels right. And just getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Because I think we often get in the way of ourselves. So the challenge and the opportunity is to get out of the way of ourselves.
Yeah. So I'm going to take that question one step further and challenge the idea that is it somewhat easier for someone like yourself who sees these, who has these ideas, has this passion to want to take them further, but you've already got a business like the olive oil business that you're talking about that is running quite, relatively successfully, and therefore you're not just going out on a limb that's putting everything else aside because you have a decent income coming in. So you've kind of got almost a safety net to be able to explore some of the passion. Whereas there are people out there, and I know that you mentioned when you were in Cuba, it was amazing to see how much someone who had nothing could give. However, like bringing it locally, there's loads of people with amazing ideas, and they might just be starting up a business, would love to do something, but they're struggling even to know when they're starting up their business whether they're going to be able to pay their rent. So how does someone like that who's got these ideas, like is it even possible for someone when they don't have a financial stability to be able to follow their purpose or to follow their soul's calling or put their idea to conception?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So Yellingbo was and remains a small business, and it hasn't grown the last 6 years because I've been focused on this other thing. So it's just to clarify, it wasn't like there was this big business with a great salary. There wasn't.
Yep.
It was like this sense of like, I could keep growing this business. And I share this because I think it's a metaphor for people who are like in jobs that don't inspire them.
Yep.
As much olive oil as I sell, it's not going to fulfill me.
Yep.
Like if we sell lots of olive oil and make millions of dollars, I still won't feel fulfilled.
Yep. And
I knew that. And so for me, it was about being young enough and not having kids and just being able to take risks.
Yep.
To say, I feel whatever skills and talents I might have, it is my absolute responsibility, because we're all privileged to some degree, the fact that we live in this country.
Yep.
And the fact that we live with the safety that we do, and the fact that we're able, most of us are not struggling to put food on the table. For most of us, the basic needs are relatively well met. That it's about taking those small risks and those small steps. And I'll tell you as well, I was in Bangladesh recently, meeting with social entrepreneurs. And these are people who don't have anything. These are entrepreneurs in slums where there's 30 people living in a room. And I've been to the largest slum in the Indian subcontinent, which is in Dhaka. And it's incredible to see these young entrepreneurs who are like creating solutions for their communities. And these are people who really have nothing.
Wow.
And so if they can do it, we can do it. So I'm simply saying, what you say is correct, but it's all relative.
Yes.
Right? So we just have to watch ourselves when that could possibly become an excuse to not act.
Agree.
Because time goes by and we're still stuck in versions of life that aren't as deeply fulfilling as they can be or aren't using our potential. And I think for all of us, we're just seeking to have an experience of life where we feel we have been on our most authentic journey. Our most authentic journey that is our own. And so it's not about how successful it is. It's whether we tried that brings that sense of joy. It's knowing that we can be proud of ourselves. And because we know, consciously or even subconsciously, when our excuses are excuses.
Yeah.
We know when they're real, and we know when they are just ideas that hold us back.
Yeah.
And so the question is a very personal one for each person.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I've got to put food on the table, I've got kids to feed, fantastic. Can you carve out half an hour in the evening to work on your passion project? Can you make a few phone calls during your lunch hour? Can you start to find ways to engage your networks to just sort of trial this idea that you've got? I mean, there's so many tools now with kind of no money. You can start to just test stuff and just see if this thing wants to be given life. So, like, yes, it's a valid point, but there are incredible entrepreneurs around the world who really have nothing or very, very little. And Bangladesh is one of the poorest countries in the world. And I've seen like incredible, these projects in the slums which are getting young girls to stay in school by finding these really creative ways to recycle paper, so that simple things like girls have not been able to access like little writing pads, and so it's sort of an excuse that sometimes their parents hold back the girls and only give it to the boy to go to school. And so this project in this slum in Dhaka where they are pulling out old rubbish and they're recycling the paper and they're sort of hand stitching these little books together and selling them for a few cents each in the market, and then giving those to the families. So they say now you have no excuse not to send your girl to school. Yeah. And amongst the pollution and the rubbish and the squalor, there is that human spirit alive and well. Yeah. And that is a social enterprise. They're selling these things for a few cents each, and then they give them to the families and say, send your girls to school, send your daughters to school. So I think all of us, when you see things like that, it's so inspiring. Yeah, definitely. And there's no doubt I'm privileged. But again, most of us in this country, I'd say, unless outside of the Aboriginal community, we're privileged. It's just relative. Yes. Relative versions of privilege.
Yeah, and I think it also goes on to say, that I think people in the more privileged countries and the first world countries, we also have almost like we've developed different expectations of what we need to do in a day, as opposed to in the developing countries, they find that extra hour because, like you said before, they don't have these distractions that we're using to not do these amazing things.
Well, they have the distractions of just survival.
Yeah, exactly.
Like really, really basic stuff.
Yeah.
But, it's like necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
So suddenly you just come up with solutions.
Yeah.
So it's, we're all just products of our environment, aren't we?
Exactly.
But I mean, it's curious because, I hear that from people. Oh, I don't have time, I don't have the money. And then they're out in the pub, spending $50 on drinks.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a break. Or, having $3-4 coffees a day. It's like when you know what you must do with your life, you find a way to make it happen.
Yeah, and you make the priorities.
Yeah, you just prioritise it.
Amazing. So that leads me to this sort of next thing I want to ask you just briefly for this one is, so when you did have the olive oil business, but you felt like you wanted to do something bigger, so you developed this I Equal Change and you started it out with the olive oil business as the trial. Were you doing it as because, you talked a little bit before about finding an avenue for these businesses who ultimately want to make profit and looking at a way of how they can build this in without it being, a huge deal. So when you were starting it out for your olive oil business, were you doing it just in the idea of an avenue to bring about social change, or were you looking at it from a business perspective as well for the olive oil company and looking at it like, wow, this is a really also great opportunity for cause marketing and for, the Yellingbo to get more profit?
I had no idea at the time what the impact would be. The only reason I built it at the time, I thought, wow, let's just give back.
Yep.
And that's going to raise money. I'd been visiting the field and these projects and saw the need.
Yep.
And thought, I want to make, the actual driver was to create those funds, and I wanted to make Yellingbo as a family business more meaningful for me personally. Yep. So I thought, and I just sort of told Dad, I said, Dad, this is what we're doing. He's like, oh, okay, whatever. Okay, cool, you do it. And I just said, okay, let's give back. So we did. And then it was only in hindsight, like a few months later, we started to see the impact on the business, which was an increase in sales and increased engagement, lots of social media and more people were buying. And that really surprised me. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like, because I had no idea about it. It just the whole thing was new for me. And then I started asking customers, and they're like, no, we actually want to buy from. We love the fact that you give back. We're going to support you.
Yeah.
Instead of the other olive oil. And then the penny started to drop. I thought, okay, this is interesting. This is actually good for business as well.
Yeah.
And then I thought, given that, if we can really model the impact on the business, could we build this into a solution for other businesses so that we can raise more money? Because the olive oil was small.
Yes.
And there were obviously endless amounts of much larger businesses. I thought, what if we could build this into an independent, plug-and-play technology solution, a platform for other brands to make it easy for them to give back?
Yep.
And if we can really measure the impact and be able to report back and prove it, then we could have something really interesting. So that's really where that started. It's been a sort of an ongoing journey of increasingly we're measuring the impact, and it's still happening today, and we're getting data from brands and testimonials and really being very focused on driving that return to make this a valuable thing. At the end of the day, if a brand does it because it's great for business, it doesn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, we raise those funds and those funds are needed.
Yeah. So
having said that, though, it's really so heartwarming just to see how people's eyes light up.
Yes.
I must say we're mostly dealing with female founders. We partner with a lot of fashion brands, and it's really wonderful to see the genuine intention and the excitement and the authenticity around, oh, wow, they just want to... Because what it seems to do, it provides a simple way for the brands to choose 3 issues that they care about. The founder or the CEO or the whole team. And often they do, they engage their staff to say, hey, guys, we're going to give back with every sale. Let's all choose as a company what we care about. And what an exciting way and wonderful way to engage your staff and inspire everyone and let them know that they're coming to work every day for something for more than a paycheck. They're actually creating impact out in the world. So there's a number of benefits it has to the brand, which we've actually learned over time, and we're still learning as brands feed that back to us.
And when you say you give them the opportunity to choose where they want to put the give back or the funds that they're raising, is that like an open field of anything, or is that because you look at a lot of NGOs over the world, and some of them obviously have greater impact, and some of them, a lot of the money goes to the administration, and they're very they're not all created equal, and so is it just open to what they want, or is it based on the ones that you've personally visited and know that they have great impact and
Yeah, exactly. So we visit and we vet the projects, and we're very careful around who we partner with. Yeah. We've only got 18 NGO partners at the moment, and about 20 of their projects that we support. So the brand chooses 3 out of those 20 that they want to support, and they're all extraordinary projects, from ending trafficking, to keeping girls in school, to working to end underage marriage, ending violence, to maternal health projects in both Uganda and up in Thailand. And so they're projects that, and really the brands get excited because it's kind of done for them. It's like, okay, you guys choose 3. It's not hundreds. So we do a lot of due diligence around best practice methodology, who's doing, what does that look like? And it's a complex area, international development, and we're still learning a lot, and will be for a long time in this space. But it's, we measure those organisations carefully. We visit them, we vet them, and then it makes it easy for the brand. Yeah. And they can really see simply what's $5 going to do, and the dollar handles around how much they raise and the impact that it will have. Yeah. And then they come, it's a lot of beautiful imagery as well that's inspiring. It's just women or girls who have been brought up in low resource settings, and so a small amount of money can really go a long way. Yeah.
So just to recap, so basically when you went into it and you had the idea from 3:00 in the morning, and then you put it into action, it was more about the social change. Then you decided and you saw how actually this can increase profits for a business as well, and so you thought, why not take it to a greater platform, and let's feed my social change passion to a greater extent by actually almost promoting it as good for and to enhance the, thrivingness of their business as well. So philanthropy in business isn't anything new. I mean, companies have been giving money back to causes for a long time. I mean, it's something that corporates have done for a really long time.
Mm.
So can you talk me through why your model of social enterprise is different and how it disrupts the traditional methods?
Mm. So in 1970, Milton Friedman said the purpose of business is to maximise profits for shareholders. That's it. The arc of CSR is really an interesting one. So we've gone from that mindset in the 70s to now examples like Tom's Shoes, where they give a pair of shoes away with every pair that you buy to children in need.
Yep.
And they're now the fastest growing shoe company in the world. And purpose is built into the DNA of their brand. So you're right, there are a number of businesses that have given away. So where it's evolved from the 1970s, business only to maximise profits, to in the 80s, CEOs starting to say, oh, look, let's write a check once a year and, it's sort of good for the staff, I'll let them know. But it was generally something that was hidden away. Key stakeholders were maybe told about it in the annual report, board and investors, but it wasn't something communicated to the public, to their customers. And often staff didn't even know about it. That's evolved to these sort of corporate staff giving programs and different ways that internally companies can engage with giving back. But even today, it is most brands still do nothing.
Yep.
Most brands that do something, those brands that do something, it's generally hidden away on their site, or it says we support, which means kind of everything and nothing. Like no one knows what that means. And part of the model that we built was to make it 100% transparent. So, to take the example of Mount Franklin used to put the pink ribbon on the water bottle years ago. And it's sort of an example of good intentions, but it didn't work out well. And for reasons that are now clear, like you don't know how much is being raised, you don't know where it's going. If you could find the fine print, at $50,000 it was capped, so you could be buying that bottle of water, think you're making an impact, but making no impact at all. And it was only done for a couple of months. So there's even brands today that still, give away, from one item they give away, 100% of proceeds, which again, no one knows what that means, right?
Yeah.
And they do it for 1 month. So it just doesn't feel authentic.
Or sustainable.
Exactly. And it feels like marketing because it's kind of like this, it's sort of this well-intended, but just this sort of messy attempt to kind of like, oh, let's do something because we should, without realizing that consumers today want to know that a brand's efforts are authentic, they're transparent, they're ongoing, and for the simple reason that these issues are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like these issues impact all of us. And so ultimately what this movement now being largely driven by millennials, like 93% of millennials say we want to buy from brands that have a deep purpose, that give back with every sale, that they want to know what brands stand for, and they will become passionate brand ambassadors for those brands that clearly do it. And so it's moved today from something that was, even today where the brands are doing something that's not clear to something that has to be done with what I call through a lens of radical transparency.
Yeah.
And how we build our equal change is that you can actually track in real time how much the brand's raising and where it's going as sales occur. So when you check out from a brand, you can choose where to send their donation, and then you can track the impact of your purchase and your choice to see in real time how much you've helped raise and where it's going. Now, that hasn't been done before. It's really a simple solution, but it's really about giving consumers, which is all of us, the opportunity to see clearly the impact that they're having by choosing to shop with that brand. And it's giving retailers the opportunity to simply communicate with, again, complete transparency, how much they're raising and where it's going. So, because a dollar's a dollar's a dollar, we know what a dollar is, it adds up, and it gives brands that window into their impact in a way that hasn't been done before. And so there's this really exciting opportunity where most consumers, which is all of us, want to know what brands stand for, and most brands are barely actually, and we work with a lot of like mainstream brands now, and this is it's like what's interesting, they know they must do something and they want to do something, but they don't know where to start. And in fairness, this is not their core competency. You know, businesses exist to maximise profits, to create products that sell, and to create marketing strategies around those products to sell them.
Yeah.
Those marketing strategies typically do not include a social good component.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing consumers saying, hold on, I'm going to buy less and I'm going to spend more on experiences, as our generation is.
Yes.
And if I'm going to buy a product, I want to know that it's actually, that business aligns with my values. That I'm being the change I want to see in the world by supporting that brand.
Yeah.
And so I really believe we haven't seen the top of the pyramid yet in terms of where this is going to go, moving towards what I would call purpose-driven commerce more than product-driven commerce.
And that, even when you just said all that, it even takes me back to the very beginning of our conversation, near the beginning, when I was talking about how can people that, you know, have an idea or a cause or something they want to support, but they don't know what to do and how to take it from the idea to action. I mean, if this becomes massive, and which I'm pretty sure it will, and all retailers take on something like this, they can even make a difference just by purchasing a shirt. You know what I mean? So here, you know, if I'm really passionate about, you know, girls in developing countries getting education, but I don't know where to start and I don't know what to do about it because, yeah, it's a great idea and it's a passion, but I just don't know how to make that into something that's a so-called business idea.
You could vote with your dollars. You can buy for those brands.
Yeah, I could just make a difference in this world and feel like I make a difference by choosing a brand. Yeah. That's brilliant.
It gives back. And it's you're right. I mean, the iCould is now becoming a marketplace. We've got almost 60 brands and counting.
Yeah.
They're giving back with every sale. So you can actually go in and shop those brands, see how much they're raising, who they're supporting, a picture of the CEO, a quote on why they care. Ultimately, this is about humanising business. You know, we want to see business reflect our values.
Yeah.
You know, we have a very antagonistic view of business.
Yeah.
Trust is very low. Trust in Australian consumers' trust of business has fallen in the last 12 months. It's been lower than it's ever been. We're like it's sort of 24 in all the OECD countries. And we have this expectation that business is trying to screw us.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of a national sport in some degree, you know. We just don't believe. And so there is a lot of work for businesses to do around, you know, re-winning the trust of their consumers. And of course, if we trust a brand, we're going to support it more.
Yeah.
We're going to speak about it. We're going to care for it. And ultimately, what we're asking of businesses is to reflect who we all are when we're not at work.
Yeah.
Which is we choose who we engage with, the issues we care about, the people we spend time with. You know, we don't want to go to work and become these sort of robots that exist to maximise profit at all cost. We want to go to work for businesses of passion and purpose. We want to support businesses of passion and purpose. And yet there's been this great disconnect where businesses have gone out in the world, they have sought to create illusions around their products, which is working less and less, you know, with models and trying to seduce us into buying this stuff. And we're just not buying it. Like, we don't want to be sold to. We want to have authentic conversations with brands as much as we do with our friends and families. And so businesses are floundering, retail is floundering because they don't know how to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
To start to have those authentic conversations and be sharing content which is true and symbolic of their values and the issues that they care about. Because traditionally the issues that businesses care about is maximising profits, because that is structure around which business has been built.
Yeah.
And so we're operating within those silos, within those belief systems that is how things are done, whereas now everything's up for grabs.
Yeah, and I think that now also you're seeing so much with the change of culture within organisations and, you know, the change of culture within leadership, the change of culture in just in really the idea of leaders starting to connect back to values and making value-based choices. So I think that in that area growing, that fits really nicely with something like then, okay, so yeah, we've come to a place within a business that we're turning our model and our strategy upside down and we really want to make value-based decisions, and now there's an answer to how to do that.
Yeah.
Which is awesome because that fits really well.
Yeah.
So is it Could this model, I know that currently I Equal Change is dealing and partnering with retailers and online retailers. Could this model be taken to service-based businesses, or even when ticket purchases for events, or what about even physical retailers or cafes or hairdressers, or, things that people are using all the time? Like, is this model that you've built only a model that can actually be sustained for online retail, or can it actually be moved to much wider audiences?
Yeah, it can. There is an enormous opportunity in bricks and mortar. Anywhere where there's a digital transaction, we could plug in.
Which is almost every place
Which is almost
now.
everywhere. Yeah, exactly. So, we're speaking from everyone to airlines, to insurance companies.
To even like Eventbrite or something like that, like every event that goes, there is hundreds and hundreds or thousands of events on those platforms.
That's right. Every ticket sale.
Yeah.
And maybe they can't afford to give $1 with every sale, but they could give 50 cents or 20 cents.
Yeah.
And again, it adds up, and it adds up quickly, and it changes lives. And
they could afford to put $1. You just put an extra $1 on the ticket price.
Whatever they have to do, it's fine with me. Yeah. So you can see that the potential is enormous. The
potential's massive.
To turn business into a force for good, and redistribute, incredible disparities of wealth.
Yeah, amazing. Well. So I know that.
Why do the ninth wealthiest men on the planet own half of the world's wealth?
Oh,
right? It's because of business, right? Business and the power of the markets and investments.
And how do you get those people changing their minds? That's the key.
Well, actually, they are. The Giving Pledge, which Bill and Melinda Gates started, which is to convince some of the world's billionaires to give away 90% of their wealth, or even up to 50% in their lifetimes. They've actually been, in some countries more than others, relatively successful in having these incredible, iconic leaders commit to it. Of course, it doesn't impact their lifestyle, but they're saying, I actually don't need this money. And when, it's a good example because, let's say you made $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
How much can you possibly spend? Not even 1% in your lifetime. So when you just present to these people, hey, these are the issues you could impact. Here are the NGOs doing extraordinary work. Here's how even $100,000 could impact a whole community. Do you want to be part of it? People really say no because they want to. And it's back to your point. It's just about making it clear, making it simple, and giving people a pathway to do so, which can unlock an enormous amount of good.
Yeah, incredible. There's just so much opportunity in it, and it's extremely exciting. So you're going back to quickly your passion around violence against women, and I know in 2012 you did an incredible TEDx talk on the issue, probably way ahead of your time, because if that was done at the same time as the Me Too campaign, it probably would have gone extremely viral. You're really passionate around this issue, and I want to just quickly talk with you about why you feel investing in women and girls will be one of the greatest drivers of growth and stability in our world.
So there are a number of belief systems and ideas and religions, institutions, which in many respects hold women and girls back as part of their structure, and in some respects why they were even created. And this has become normalised to the point that we don't see it anymore. We often, to our own detriment, due to cultural relativism, we sort of respect these practices as if they're cultural and therefore should be respected. Like, no, anything that causes harm, anything that holds back a human being from developing, anything that discriminates against a girl should not be respected. It should be challenged because it's just an idea. Or it's just something that some guy in a cave came up with thousands of years ago. Why the hell are we giving it any credibility at all? Just because, a few million people follow it doesn't mean it's right. No one questions them. Mostly, most of us would follow an inspiring leader off a cliff if he told us to. We just we haven't developed in many parts of the world. I've seen it's just due to the struggles of life. We just accept because it's the cost of not accepting, or the cost of challenging the status quo, can be very high in some countries. And as a result of that, there are a lot of codified practices that are preventing women and girls from finishing their schooling, marrying them off at the age of 12, all the impact that has around, for every year a girl stays in school increases about 11% that she will earn per year over her lifetime. Every year a girl stays in school, she has one less child. So you keep a girl in school, that has enormous impact on the age at which she marries. She marries later. She gets to choose her husband much more than she does, obviously, if she's a teenage girl. She'll have a much smaller family. Therefore, the cost of bearing children will be less. You give a girl or a young woman the chance to start a business. She will invest 90%. Statistically, we know that to be true, back into her family, back into wanting her daughter to have the same opportunities, access to healthcare, education than her son does. You give that money to a man, he will, again, statistically, we know to be correct, in the developing world, he will invest 40% of it back into his family and spend the rest on himself. No, we can take from that what we will, but we know this to be true. So, I had the extraordinary opportunity to meet Muhammad Yunus recently, the grandfather of microfinance. Most of their microfinance goes to women because they know that when you allow a woman in a community to start a business, it has extraordinary returns for that community. The repayment rate is higher amongst women than amongst men, so the default is much lower amongst women. Women have this sort of, where the community bonds are often stronger, they hold each other accountable they help each other out to repay those loans. So the data is out there, and it grows constantly around why invest in women and girls. And most NGOs are focused on it because you simply get a higher return on the philanthropic dollar. So, it's not a mistake that if you open the website of most big, NGOs around the world, their focus is women and girls empowerment because you just get a higher return. And everyone wants, smart investors who are wanting to see their philanthropic dollars have the greatest impact. Like when they're investing in a company, they want the highest return. If they're investing philanthropically, they want to see that money have the highest return. So statistically, this holds up across all areas of development. And that's why, we focus on it. The impetus was a personal one initially, but now it just makes great sense philanthropically and for business as well. And we're partnering with a lot of retailers founded by women and run by women. So there's a great alignment there as well.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so many questions that come to mind about all of that, and I know how short we are of time. So it's like I'm sitting here thinking...
Ask me the key ones. Is it all good?
Yeah, no, because there's so many other things. There are a few other things I want to talk about, but yeah, I don't want to go into a discussion about this, but even just hearing that and knowing that we've got the data to support the growth. The community growth, the country's growth, the stability when women hold the power, but yet we're still living in all of these countries, especially in the Western world, or actually in the whole world, mainly, where we're still striving to have male leadership, and yet the data is telling us that the countries will thrive more with female leadership.
So let's take Australia as an example, because I think it's easy when we think, it's all happening up there.
Yeah.
So almost 2 women a week are killed in this country by their partners or ex-partners, right?
Yep.
Now, if 2 women a week were killing due to some disease, there would be enormous resources unlocked nationally. Like, what is this disease that's killing 2 Australians a week? This is happening behind closed doors. It's an issue that's come a long way. There's a lot more awareness around it. We know as well, and this includes Australia, where women are strong, where they're educated, where they hold a dominant position in communities, in households, those communities are more successful. They're more stable. There's less violence. What are the versions of masculinity that are preventing that development, that are reinforcing the violence, that are also men are suffering as well from this. And so I share this because I think it's important to talk about, okay, we know the data around women and girls. Mostly they're being held back because of ideas, constructs, beliefs, behaviours enacted by men. But I don't want to make it all about, I don't want to sort of create this great divide about them and us, because men are suffering as well as a function of these versions of masculinity, which have been enforced, drilled into us, which we've grown up with from the moment of birth. And this is a huge problem in Australia, as it is with many other countries. The idea that being vulnerable, that being soft, that crying is somehow feminine and somehow weak and therefore shouldn't be expressed. I mean, it has tragic consequences for boys, and we know for all of us, when young boys are told that they shouldn't express themselves, and therefore over time they're told to suck it up. They stop even knowing what they feel anymore as a result of being told by the men in their life, don't be a girl, don't be a pussy. What's the language that we use with our young boys? How did sweet young boys become killers of women? How do sweet young boys become rapists? How do sweet young boys, even if they don't do anything, that ends them in jail, they just become sexist and angry towards women?
They've got so much built up emotion inside.
Yeah. Does the unexpressed softness, which is part of the human experience, does our vulnerability, which is almost denied in young boys and young men, does that found some of their anger and ultimately their violence? I believe it does. I believe that the language we place around what is ultimately just the human experience, which is all of us have vast capacities for softness and for vulnerability. And we know now vulnerability to be strength, with great talks like Brene Brown. I mean, but did we need Brene Brown, as fantastic as it is, to tell us that vulnerability is strength? That this, we're all labouring under this construct that somehow you have to be tough. I mean, where do we get this nonsense from? Ultimately, we are all seeking to have deep, vulnerable connections with people. But a lot of men don't even know how to access that, let alone have the conversation, let alone feel it, let alone live it, let alone model it for other young boys in their communities. And so there's actually some great work being done in Australia around this space, around challenging these sort of dominant versions of masculinity, around returning to rites of passage, that you don't become a man because you got drunk for the first time. You become a man over time with mentors to guide you through that journey, to teach you what is healthy masculinity, what does that look like, how to respect women, how to understand no is no, and she'll tell you that with her body long before she tells you that with her voice, and to respect it at every point, to put her care before your own needs. But this is not taught, largely. And so it's about working upstream. It's about working upstream before the issues happen, before women are being violated and abused and even killed. How do we train the next generation of boys to truly become men? And this is really important because it's going to change all the work that happens downstream. A lot of the NGO work, which is about actually responding to the trauma, will be less required or will evolve as men become part of the solution as well.
It's massive. It's such a massive, complex issue, and yet it's in some ways also quite simple of some of the solutions that need to occur. And it is positive to see that there are some on-the-ground initiatives that are taking place today to address some of these issues around men and men vulnerability. And there's so many more, men's groups and things like the Man Cave and Dr. Arnie Rubinstein's work on rites of passage, and that they're becoming so much more promoted or available or accessible, or people starting to know about them. So they're moving more into the mainstream, which is just incredible. And I really hope that, that we see that throughout the next generations, we see a lot of changes in that, and we can only, I suppose, just hope that situation occurs, because it is massive issues, and it is true that we need to start changing the cycles.
Yeah.
So just quickly a few things, and we really do, I know, have to finish up, but how important for you to be able to be a social entrepreneur and to make great impact in everything you do? How important is it for your own personal well-being and your own personal self-care and your own personal self-connection, and working on who you are and your values and all of those sort of things when it comes to being a change maker in the world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, for all of us, we can't do our best work unless we take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I exercise probably 5 days a week. I meditate every day, yoga, eat really well, as well as I can. Lots of olive oil, which I recommend all of you. Lots of olive oil. The Mediterranean diet is a good thing, is a very good thing. Very little meat, fish, vegetables.
Yeah. So you really got to take care of yourself.
Just take care and just constantly check in. We're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
And the deeper we're able to respond from our own integrity and authenticity around what we are seeking to create in the world, the more impact we can have, and the more joy we access as well. Right. We all have challenges in our life, and yet we all want our work, which is where we spend, a hell of a lot of time, to be meaningful. So, not everyone has to or should start a business, but how do we work within our businesses, within the companies that where we are, to actually, how can we be an entrepreneur to inspire our teams to go on this journey?
Yeah. I
mean, there's really endless ways, only up to our creativity, around how do we live our best lives?
Yeah, and then how do we
create balance?
Yeah,
and just ultimately be proud of our journey, and again, to sort of end where we started. Our time is short.
Yes.
And for me, it's always been, if I make it to the rocking chair, I want to look back and be like, and just kind of feel there was no stone left unturned. Like I lived courageously.
Yeah.
I didn't live safely in a way that prevented me from using whatever my best self may be.
Yeah.
And of course it's hard. It's meant to be. But there'll also arrive those moments where you'll think, oh my God, how lucky am I to be on this path?
Yeah.
And again, it can be the change, quote unquote, change making thing can be a small part of what we do, but something, the cumulative effect of all of us doing something will be enormous.
Yeah. It's
like the cumulative effect of all of us shopping brands and wanting to buy brands and lobbying brands to give back. Brand owners listen to their customers. So we all have a voice. We can vote with our dollars. We can vote with our voice. We can turn business into a force for good. We can all be part of this change. Yeah. It's just our small actions every day which add up, because there's 7 billion of us, and there's 25 odd million of us in Australia.
Yeah.
And we can be, reimagining and redefining the world we want to live in every day.
Yeah. And it's so true. It is so true. And, it doesn't, even just in this whole conversation, I think that what people can really take away is that you really don't have to, it doesn't have to be really overwhelming and stressful to be able to make a difference. There are small things that you can do, and you can even make a difference through, even talking about this amazing business that you've started with the I Equal Change, is even just each time you shop, if you choose the retailers, and maybe there's only a certain amount at the moment, but that's just growing every day with your business. And as we discussed, the opportunities are limitless in where that could go, and even just being able to be a conscious consumer can really make a massive difference for people in their lives. So we're going to wind it up, but before I do, I just want to bring up one more thing, because I think it's a really important point, and that is that there is so much I suppose, data and research behind the fact that we as humans, each individual one of us, gets more joy into our lives when we become the giver. So when we're generous and there's so much about, there's movements on kindness now, gratitude and kindness and all these things are massive within the mainstream now. So when we do acts of kindness and when we are generous and we are giving, we fulfill our own. We become fulfilled ourselves as well. So is this giving back model for the well-being of the giver part of the, I suppose, overall story with some of not just individuals but these retailers? So we've talked about with these retailers that they're contributing to social change and they're increasing their profits and their bottom line, but are they also gaining more personal fulfillment because they're becoming a giver? And therefore we all know that when we're personally fulfilled, we're also making great change in the world because we act differently in all of our relationships, whether they're our work relationships, our personal relationships, our relationships with ourselves, all these things. The snowball effect is massive when we feel fulfilled. So is that one of the big advantages of being? Yeah,
I feel that's a driver of often why they want to do it. They want to give back. I mean, of course, they're people like all of us, and then they know that if they're able to use the instrument of their business as a way to give back, it has gives them the same dopamine hit that we all get when we, give someone a couple of dollars on the street. And that's what's beautiful about the human condition. It's universal. We all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. For some people, it's having children, and they put all their energy into raising a beautiful family. For some people, it's starting a business that employs lots of people, and then they go on the journey of turning it into a socially responsible brand. It's unique to the human experiences. We want to be part of something larger, something that takes us out of our heads, something that contributes, and it creates joy. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving. People say, "Oh, but you get something out of it." So, what's wrong with that? Like, why should giving just be, why should there not be a net gain for both the giver and the receiver? I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Totally.
So, the brands get a lot of joy from what we hear from them. They love being part of this community of brands. They love engaging their customers. They love hearing the response they get from the customers that actually they really care that the brand gives back. And it creates this virtuous cycle where they feel more engaged, where customers start to expect it. So, with I Equal Change, we're seeking over time to create a new normal. Where to not give back, you're actually not relevant anymore. Because it becomes mainstream. And ultimately reflects our humanity and the fact that we all want to be part of something bigger. So we've effectively just built this platform to make it simple for brands to do that amongst all their busyness and access that experience of goodwill and the emotion. We're not rational creatures. We think we are, but we're not. Every day we're making decisions based on how things make us feel. That's what we say. So this is another example of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's brilliant, and I think in summary, the whole concept in so many ways, way beyond, profit, social change, personal fulfillment, the ripple effects of all of that, just lead to an initiative like this actually contributing to a wealthy world. So, that's brilliant. So, thank you so much for chatting.
You. My pleasure.
So much goodness in this conversation.
I love what you're doing as well. I love your work. I love your passion.
Thank you.
I love your focus on this. I think it's great to celebrate. There's so many incredible people out there who are just like, both large and small, it doesn't matter. It's just they're on their journey.
Yeah.
And what's lovely is that, and I love to hear these podcasts because we listen to people's journey and we can all see reflected back part of our own story.
Yeah, totally. It's amazing. So if people were to want to find out more about what you're doing and more about I Equal Change, or even just some of your, even looking back at your TED Talk that you did, which was incredible, what would they do? Just search your name, or like...
Just go to iequalchange.com. It's all there.
there.
All the brands, shop brands that give back. There's social media links, and even the TED Talk is on that.
So with iequalchange.com, is the equal a word spelt out?
Yeah. You actually can't use a symbol for a web address, sadly. So, yeah, it's letter I, the word equalchange.com.
Brilliant. Yeah. Amazing. So thank you everyone who's tuned in today. I'm Lisa Entwistle, your host and founder of Wealthy Living. I'm an integrated life, clarity and wellbeing coach. I do workplace wellness, I do event facilitation and hosting. To find out a little bit more about my services, you can connect with me online. You can go to www.wealthyliving, that's WELLTHY living.com.au. So, and if you've enjoyed the episode, please leave a comment, rate it on iTunes so that maybe more people in your network will be able to listen too. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day.